Story won the fire out there. It was near midnight now. The snowstorm hasn't ceased since noon. Everything was covered in white fluff, wool. DNT envy a person who gets caught outside in such a weather like this. It isn't often it snows this hard in Ireland. We're used to the beautiful emerald sheen of the grass all across the Innisam, and the sapphire waters of the lake by our house. Ever since I remember I've lived here with my mother. She loved this island and never wanted us to move away. That's why Father left not long after I was born. My older sister moved to Dublin with him, so it's just me, my mom, and our cat Rua. I liked it here as well, the slow life, laying in the grassy glen, looking up at the azure sky. Alas, it was nearing Christmas now. We would have to fly to Dublin since my parents are hell-bent on spending at least the holiday together as family. I didn't suppose I would go to school this week, Consie. During the snow outside, I'll just have to study on my own. I've always been a night owl, so I took my workbook and started reading about the geography of Asia, since it'll be the next subject, though. Hence we go back to school. I was ready to focus entirely on the words before me, till I heard a knock somewhere in the house. I put down the book and headed to the corridor. Then the knock sounded out again. Now I could clearly hear it coming from the front door. Momentarily I froze. Who could it be at this hour? I thought to myself. I decided to ignore it. Then another knock came. I ignored it as well. Then the knocking grew insistent. It became more of sound of thuds than mere knocking. It was loud and kept on going for a while. Finally I budged. I looked through peephole, but then I felt old sweat on my body. There was no one there. I heard a simple knock, but it wasn't coming from here. It was resounding from the back door. I could feel my heart rate accelerating and goosebump as forming on my skin. I ran to the back door and turned on the kitchen light. I looked through the window, but there was also no one there. That's when I heard this blood-hurdling screech. It didn't sound like any animal I knew. I felt like throwing up from fear. It was long and resembled a human only a little. It seemed like something that was human once, but is no more, and at the same time it was so wild, so savage. I don't think it ever could have been something natural. I fell onto my back and scrambled away from the door on all fours. I screamed my lungs out. My mother came running into the kitchen. "What is going on?" she asked, clearly just awoken. She looked startled and eyed the door warily, seeing that I am staring at it. "Why are you screaming?" she traced. I to calm her voice, but I could hear the fear in it. Anyway, she saw me shaking and looked like she's freezing cold. I heard ... I heard the screech. It sounded so unnatural, like if a deer was a predator ... I said, shrinking away. "I heard nothing. Are sure you're okay? It must have been just in your head." She tried to calm me down, but the knocking and thudding. She put her finger on my mouth, interrupting me effectively. "I would have heard it if it was true. You know I'm a light sleeper. Your mind must be just playing with you." She silenced my complaints. He then poured water into an electric kettle and tried to turn it on, but it didn't seem to work. Then the light gave out. My mom tried to turn it off and on again, but the light bulb shattered. I screamed in horror and ran to her, but I stepped on the glass shards with my bare feet. "Shh, calm down," she whispered. She opened the kitchen drawer and lit up 2 candles. She sat one on the counter and took the second one with her. She then returned with a medkit from the bathroom cabinet. She upped up onto the kitchen table and examined my foot. She used tweezers to remove the glass, disinfected the wounds with spirit, and bandaged up my foot. We then heard another screech. This time she heard it too. We both looked out the kitchen window, and as expected there was no one there, but we did see footsteps in the snow, but the storm quickly wiped them away. I didn't have much time to notice what type of marks they were, but Mom said they don't seem like paws, shoes, or hooves. We were both scared now. She returned to her bedroom and I followed her. We slept together that night. In the morning, Mom left for work, and I was left all alone. I felt brave in the daylight hours and decided to check if I can find anything that could clear up this situation around the house. After walking around for what seemed hours, I found footsteps in the snow. They looked similar enough to the ones I saw during the night. I was too scared to follow them, so I headed the opposite direction instead. Then I heard howling, but nothing like a wolf. It seemed alien somehow, like it belongs to a being from another planet. I started running. I couldn't tell you for how long, even if I wanted to, but I was terrified. I got to the frozen lake. I saw something shining in its depth. I felt it calling to me. I couldn't stop myself from wandering over onto the ice. I stared beneath the ice into the deep indigo water. This glowing thing turned out to be, and I noticed it only when I saw another one open. Then many more ignited. The ice broke, and I fell into the freezing ice-cold water. As I sank, I saw weird creatures around me, their eyes upturned, slanted, and glowing like nothing I've ever seen before. Their facial features were harsh and angular, but beautiful. They had very prominent cheekbones. Their long hair flowed everywhere as they circled me ominously. The water was so cold I couldn't move a muscle in my body. One of them grabbed me by my arm and pulled me deeper into the murky lake. It had antlers, fawn ears, and cat-like nose. Its slender body reminded me of modern depictions of fair folk, and that's when I thought to myself that I might be right. It was said in folklore that fairies lived in lakes and rivers too. In the first SC con, I wanted to tell myself to calm down, having identified the creatures. But then I remembered how truly despicable, fierce, and dangerous they truly can be in all the depictions in media. We reach the bottom shortly. The creature looked me into the eye and said, "You may call me Kyom. I'm one of the Lake Fi. You must worry about where you are and why we have taken you in." Added, although it seemed more difficult to do underwater, Tifa, we urge you to ask your mother for the truth about her close interactions with the fair folk. We wish for you to learn of the truth about who you are. After it said that, I opened my eyes and found myself laying in the snow. I was soaking wet, but I didn't feel cold. I returned home terrified. I was restlessly waiting for my mom to come back home. When she finally walked through the front door, I told her about what happened to me. She sighed and sat me down on the sofa. AOIFE. When you were just a baby, the Fi abducted you. They took you away from me shortly after you were born. They have always stalked me since I was a child. I still don't know why. But when they kidnapped you, I couldn't just let them be off with you. I found them in their caves and got you back. I killed many of them to do that. I can't believe that. Why didn't you tell me that before? You are just a child. I didn't want you to worrying. Well, maybe if you did, I would know about them. What if they took me away again because I didn't know to avoid them? I was furious. She knew that and never told me. She wouldn't have. If it wasn't for the fairies, I thought we could trust each other. But she betrayed me. I said to her to not speak to me and ran away. I avoided the lake, but the five found me nonetheless. Here is something your mother didn't tell you. So she still lied to me even when she was supposed to tell me the whole truth. Don't blame her. It's not something she knew herself. Your mother is half of five folk. When I heard those words, I froze. My mother is half fi. So does that mean ... I'm part fairy? Story to there's something in the air. Lorcan Campbell squints as he looks through the falling snow at the imposing 40-foot-high glacier. Lorcan is leading a year-long expedition for Motherboard Inc., a private company searching for artifacts in Antarctica's vast expanse. Portly, with a thick black beard, bushy eyebrows, ruddy complexion, and a resonant voice, 55-year-old Lorcan is exhausted and counting on this expedition being his last. He has been with Motherboard Inc. since its inception 30 years ago and has led expeditions to Singapore, Venezuela, the Congo, Greenland, and Iceland. His last expedition, the search for gold in the wreck of the World War II Australian cruiser Sydney, left him feeling like a guilty grave robber. Wiry with greasy shoulder-length hair, 32-year-old Key Walker's darting eyes always seem to be on the prowl for something that will make him rich, famous, or both, with hazy eyes and a nose so big it almost reaches his upper lip. 28-year-old Nate Hobbs is in Antarctica for an adventure, while 25-year-old Harold Wedlock, a muscular 6'5", is saving money for a wedding and a house. Must be 40 feet high, Lorcan observes, wiping the snow. His goggles. Key replies, it's a perfect square. It looks like it's ice, but it isn't. It's made up of an unidentified compound. You don't see something like this in nature. Rounding a corner of the glacier, Nate shouts, you've got to see this. Lorcan and Key fight their way through the blinding snow to where Harold is waiting, smiling like he's won a prize. A door, Key notes. That proves this thing is man-made. I've been banging on it loud enough to wake the dead, Harold says. Looks like nobody's home. Whoever is inside isn't expecting visitors. Harold Lorcan returns. Key notices a pad built into the door. Could be a security device, but there's no place to type in a code, and I don't see a port for an access card. I gives Lorcan a sly side glance, his eyes brightening. We're not breaking in. Key, if this is a Russian or Chinese base, we could start World War III. Come on, Lorcan, look at this place there. There's not a crack, not a seam in this material. You know the Russians and the Chinese don't have anything like this. Neither do we, Lorcan replies. Suppose it's a tomb and we find a coffin of Iamo in Step or King Rooting Teuton or some other ancient king. Key asks, do you know how much Motherboard would pay us for something like that? Nate, Harold, stay with the snow boss. Key and I will investigate. Oh, come on, Lorcan. Nate protests. I want to go with you. I want to ponder this ice cube's great mystery. Ponder, you know, like finding out if aliens abducted Roanoke settlers, or where Amelia Earhart crashed, Or where is Bobby Gentry? All right, but first we cover our Keisters. Lorcan calls the bird station on the radio, apprising them of the situation and instructing them to contact motherboard. Moments later, Lorcan's radio squelches headquarters approves the mission. The radio squeals again when Lorcan replies with his thanks. A sly rumble at their feet increases the men's curiosity. What the heck is that? Nate asks. Maybe a seismic shift. Lorcan replies. The door begins to rise. How do you do that? Key asks. I think it was the radio. Lorcan surmises. The door must be responding to our radio's frequency. A series of lights turn on as the men pass through a hallway. The walls are decorated with stars and planets. Might be a road map for E.T. Think it is. Lorcan looks over his shoulder. The skeleton of a saber-toothed tiger. That's nothing compared to THIS. Nate says, pointing toward a white coffin in the corner of the room. Its lid is transparent. Inside is a being that scales 8 feet tall. It has a powerful, gold-covered body, bat-like wings, and long, sharp talons. Its face also appears to be made of gold. It has almond-shaped emerald eyes and wears a headpiece adorned with a fierce cobra. Could be Egyptian, Lorcan surmises. Egypty. Hands here in Popsicleville. Key wonders, whoever he is, I hope he stays inside that box. Nate adds. Lorcan sniffs the air. Anybody else smell something sweet? Key takes a deep breath. Yeah, it smells like vanilla cupcakes. Looking at the tools and weapons hanging nearby, Nate says, I think we're in a museum. Yeah, but whose museum is it? Key asks. Nate picks up a weapon resembling a gun. Be careful with that, Lorcan cautions. It's not standard issue. Nate snickers, pressing the trigger. A beam of light narrowly misses Lorcan's head, burning a hole. In the wall, the men watched, dumbfounded, as the wall repairs itself. Key gives Lorcan another sneaky side glance, his eyes darting gleefully. I know what you're thinking, Key. Lorcan says, we can't pilfer this site. It's obviously a sacred place for whom we're in the middle of a blizzard. We've only got 4 hours left before it'll be dark for the next 6 months. We can't leave this gold mine unattended. We have to take this stuff with us. Asterisk. Dr. Hoagland Hojhakala looks out of his office window, watching the sun disappear. The setting sun means he'll be stuck inside the station with 9 other motherboard employees already showing signs of cabin fever. Many of the crew have worked with the 62-year-old doctor before, frequently seen wearing a warm smile that accents her blonde bangs. Middle-aged archaeologist Jewel Plummer also dabbles in ancient history and is one of 2 women at the station. The other personnel include a pair of maintenance men, Chip Taylor and Alan, a cook, Rosie Ray Vale, and Tap Boland, a young gamer in charge of communications. Motherboard, Inc. has invested heavily in sending its staff into a glacial wasteland. They rebuilt a forum, our Cold War Air Force station, refurbishing the offices, dorm, lounge, medical bay, cafeteria, and communications center. Supplies are brought in every 2 weeks by airplanes with skis. Alt-Haug landing at night or in frigid temperatures can be hazardous. Landing in a whiteout like the one currently blanketing Bird Station is now impossible. The station also relies heavily on a large snow bus that can transport all 10 workers at once. Hodge looks at the thermometer outside his window. It registers minus 46 degrees Fahrenheit. He knows it will get much colder as the snow gets heavier. Asterisk, 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 S.A. Feely back at Bird Station. After a harrowing return trek, Lorcan feels he can finally exhale. Worst snowstorm I've seen since we've been here. We got 3 inches in an hour. Never mind the weather, Jewel says. Tell me about the mummy you found. Better yet, I'll introduce you. Goldie's in the storage room. Goldie, you'll see why we call him that. The pair don surgical masks and enter the storage room, pausing to look at the saber-toothed tiger's bones. Those bones look genuine to me. I'd say they're 10,000 years old or more. Jewel comments. Jewel looks at the mummy's gold death mask. Gasping, she stumbles backward. Saurus. What or who is Saurus? A Yupik god. He's no one to be messed with, Jewel replies. In ancient times, Saurus, the god of the darkness, and Gidrick, the god of light, shared the planet, each ruling over Earth for 12 hours. Gidrick was kind, and when he reigned, there was life, love, and happiness. When Saurus reigned, there was disease, death, and misery. Saurus was a trickster. When he appeared, instead of detecting the scent of death, his victims would smell something sweet he drew his power from. Driving his victims mad, Saurus wanted Earth for himself and killed his brother in battle, burning his body so he couldn't return. Gidrick's son, Norwick, then defeated Saurus, but he couldn't bring himself to kill his uncle, so he imprisoned him in a coffin. Norwick took Saurus' place as a god, and the balance between darkness and light was restored. Saurus was banished to Antarctica and the sea, hailed in a tomb. Before he was banished, he swore he would return to defeat Norwick and plunge the world into eternal darkness. Nice bedtime story. Whether he's a goddo or a paperweight, Goldie's Discovery guarantees we'll all be getting hefty bonuses. You'll be able to buy boatloads of that perfume you're wearing. I'm not wearing any perfume. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Nate enters the storeroom, where Key sits in a chair, a machine gun in his lap, staring at the mummy. Too. How can you look at that thing, Key? Key lowers his mask. Oh, I dunno. I think Goldie's kind of handsome. You know, regal. Besides, he's made of gold, which means a big payday for us. Key yawns as he rises from the chair. Nate takes a deep breath. Rubbing his long nose, he coughs at the sweet smell in the air, wondering as he puts on his surgical mask if it will do him any good. Since he and the others were exposed to the tomb's atmosphere, why are we pulling guard duty over a mummy? We found it and had to babysit it for 2 hours in a blizzard until we could get back here. That should be enough. All us peons have to take a shift. He replies, What's the matter? Are you afraid of the dark? Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Nate spends his entire shift fighting back nausea and blowing his nose. He never liked the smell of vanilla, and judging by the strong smell, the cook must be drowning her food in it. Nate struggles to breathe, dragging himself to his room after his shift. His eyesight falters, blurring. He's so tired that instead of watching the latest installment of Shetland, he goes directly to bed, convinced he has the flu. At 5:30 a.m., Nate wakes up vomiting blood. Pain burns through his joints, and his eyes are so sensitive that he resorts to wearing sunglasses indoors. He goes to Dr. Hagelin twice a day. Over the next 2 days, becoming so distressed that Hodge is convinced he's having a panic attack. Hodge has seen the symptoms before. He fig. Yours Nate is just another sun-deprived crew member feeling paranoid and claustrophobic. A few doses of diazepam finally calms Nate down. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After 4 days away from guard duty, Nate is able to take his usual shift. It helps somewhat that other members of the crew are experiencing the same physical ailments and strange dreams he's been having. The diazepam proves so effective that Nate nods off while watching over Goldie. He dreams about going home, hooking up with his band, and playing in Malibu for the horny beach bunnies. The smell of vanilla fills his nostrils. His dream is replaced by the sight of Goldie running through a devastated landscape as flaming arrows narrowly whiz by him. Shaking the nightmare from his head, Nate stands over Goldie's coffin, glaring in anger at his gold-plated body. He smashes his hand against the transparent coffin lid. "Stay out of my head. Stay out of my head." He bangs his fist against the lid until his hand is bloody. A minuscule, almost undetectable crack forms in the corner of the lid. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Nate is found next to the coffin. Despite 40 minutes of resuscitation attempts, Hodge declares Nate dead from cardiac arrest. Hodge expresses his growing concern over the crew's health to Lorcan. When people start giving up and think about killing themselves, we're way past cabin fever. Half the crew is complaining of flu-like symptoms, yet they're not sick. Key Walker said Nate was having nightmares with a voice taunting him, saying, "Release, release." Now Key is having them. I thought Nate vetted here. He said he liked the challenge of taming a frozen wilderness. He changed. He went from being an adventurer to being skittish and sleep-deprived. He reached the point where no number of pills or counseling would alleviate his mental anguish. I can't medicate this epidemic out of existence. Lorcan. The crew is depressed, barely able to function. The maintenance guys, Chip and Ethan, and Rosie the cook, think their nightmares stem from that mummy you're keeping in the storeroom. There's not much I can do for now. We can't fly anyone in or out. They had a few hours of calm weather, but nothing long enough for a plane to land. We're stranded, and on top of that, there's something screwy with the ventilation system. People are complaining that the air smells funny. I've had Chip and Ethan tear this place apart. The air still smells the same. Maybe it's connected to everyone's edginess, but I feel fine. Hodge says, How are you feeling? Like I'm giving an epileptic gorilla a piggyback ride. Like I said, everyone thinks Saurus is the source of their misery. Lorcan covers his mouth as he coughs. What do you want me to do? Dock the company? Salivating over that corpse. I'd like to toss it out in the snow. Then maybe our luck will change. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The voice in Tap Boland's head repeats the same phrase that's been hounding him for a week. Release, release. The base's communications operator passes Hodge in the hallway, his thin features locked in a grimace. Hello, Tap. Backing down the hallway, Tap lowers his sunglasses, looking strangely at Hodge, as if he doesn't recognize him. Release, release. Hodge peeks in the communications office. The console is on fire. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Hodge walks with Lorcan toward the lounge. Good thing you happened by the comms office. The whole base might have caught fire, Lorcan says. I was too late to keep Tap from destroying the console or H himself. Hodge replies. Harold says he saw Tap walk out into the blizzard without protection, a willful suicide. So no Tap, no radio, no internet, and no phones. We're deaf and blind. We've lost control. Hodge says, I think only you, me, Jewel, and Harold are unaffected. That's why I'm having the staff report to the lounge. Hopefully we can keep an eye on everyone and keep them safe. Key exits the lounge, holding the door open for them. What are you doing with that axe, Key? Lorcan asks cautiously. What axe? Key asks, wandering off. Wait. Where are you going? I ordered everyone to stay in the lounge. I'm just going outside for a walk. Before they can stop him, Key lets out a mad laugh, running away, looking in the lounge. Hodge gently nudges Lorcan. What? We've got to get after Key. Lorcan scans the lounge. The bodies of Chip Taylor, Ethan Allen, and Rosie Revale lay stacked on top of each other. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Key thrusts open the door to the storeroom. He brings the axe down on Sora's coffin, hacking at it until the lid shatters. There. Are you happy? You're released. Now will you leave my mind alone? Soros rises from his coffin. No one hears Key scream. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Harold and Jewel rush toward Lorcan and Hodge. You've got to see this, Jewel shouts, pulling Lorcan down the hallway. Why? Lorcan and Hodge follow Jewel and Harold to the storage room. Soros's coffin is splintered into pieces. Soros is free. We've got to get out of here, Jewel exclaims. The color drains from Lorcan's features. Get to the snow, boss. Hodge, Jewel, and Harold quickly suit up for the cold. Put a suit on, Lorcan. Hodge shouts at him. Somebody has to try and stop Soros. If I'm not out in 10 minutes, step on the gas and don't stop until you reach the Amundsen Scott station. The trio runs for the snow bus. Hodge pauses before getting in. Looking up at the black sky, he curses at the falling snow. Harold starts the snow bus and checks the gas gauge. Half a tank. We need a full tank to get to the Amundsen Scott station. Hodge points out. Hen, we're in for a long walk. Jewel replies, I'd rather face a blizzard than Soros. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Lorcan adjusts the strap digging into his shoulder and creeps down the hallway, looking for a place to ambush Soros. The sound of a deep, guttural growl followed by a long hiss freezes him. Roaring, a saber-toothed tiger charges down the hallway. Lorcan flattens himself against a doorway as it runs by. What is behind the saber-toothed tiger frightens him even more. Soros moves toward him, spreading his wings, his talons ready to strike. Lorcan raises the flamethrower. I've got a gift for your coming out party. Soros, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. A rescue team arrives at Bird Station 2 days after its last transmission. Weapons at the ready, the 6-member team enters the darkened facility. Captain Eugene Riker points at his mouth, indicating he can see his breath heats off electricity. 2. He whispers to Lieutenant Foster Cook, stifling a cough. Riker notices the walls are blackened and scorched. Cook sniffs the air. Smells like vanilla in here. Riker turns his head, thinking he sees something in the shadows. Story 3: Winter sacrifices to cold, to snow. Well, that's what people say, hey, all sorts of things. But I'm pretty sure it snows in Siberia. Maybe cold air is to dry or something. But I doubt that has ever been an issue in Wales. The climb is tough. I expected it to be. Strictly speaking, it's a walk, not a climb, and a hill, not a mountain. But these things are relative. I used to come here all the time, sometimes every day, but my health has declined over the last few years with a resultant increase in girth. Yet I am determined today the solstice will be a new beginning. There is a peculiar winter freshness to the hillside. Leaving the compact frozen earth of the car park, I join the trail which ascends to the fort. Thin sunlight brushes my skin with thrilling tingles. Through air cold enough to slice nostrils like a razor, I am thankful for my boots bought 2 decades ago from a soldier who had been issued the wrong kit while stationed in Iraq. There has been no rain, yet the trail is plowed into troughs of frozen mud with cracking ice puddles, straggling clumps of brown bracken, and stubborn gorse, crisply frosted in a heavy dew that never dispersed. The frigid earth crunches and crumbles as I lean into hiking pole, which, to any observer, might seem incongruous in the hands of a fat, sweat-drenched, red-faced old man. But for now the hill is mine alone. The sharp scent of gorse battles with an earthy, composting stench, muted by the icy breeze. The base of the hill is a corridor of rowan, sagging under the weight of bright winter berries and skeletal silver birch. As I break cover, already breathing hard, I enter another world. Beyond the sanctuary of the trees, wind easily sweeps away the warmth of the sun. Fine mist settles in the basin, not yet dense enough to obscure the motley muddle of meadows and scrappy bare hedgerows which encircle the river banks and glittering gems of distant windows. The enclosures may be new, but this land was pasture long before the first rocks were dragged to the summit above. The twin monuments of Wygarn Gach serve as both witness and gateway to an unimaginably ancient world. Atop the red cairn, the hill is reputedly made for the blood spilled by Romans, a blood that still speaks from the Ice Age boulders where I rest to snatch breath from the frozen fingers of the wind. 3 of these boulders are positioned and hewn to form benches, boldly chiseled in Welsh and, with macabre irony, English and Latin. Within the safety of the hills, breath duly caught, I resign myself to the throbbing pain already known my chest and knees and resume the climb to Wygar Fatch on the first peak above. The trail lies open for this stretch, bordered by pale marsh grass, large sea, lumps of withered bracken, and patches of rusty heather. This view of the valley floor is breathtaking. The sun still high enough to transform the river to a gargantuan gunmetal slow worm, slinking lazily between the road and train tracks. The cool, powder blue sky is broken only by a few oily clouds, frothing gently over the horizon. The wind falls to a respectful breeze as I near the little fort, as though I have climbed above its domain. My raking breath breaks a perfect silence, briefly joined in fluted greeting by a solitary skylark, who, heralding my arrival, disappears over the brow to Wygar for. At the first walls of its smaller sibling, the large fort remains hidden from view. From the path, the little fort could be mistaken for a natural scattering of glacial rocks, but an adventurer bold enough to brave the tangled undergrowth and tumbling sandstone is rewarded with the shadow of a structure long ago trampled by unforgiving Roman boots. Today, however, my quest lies at the farther peak, in the expansive majesty of Waigere for itself. Clinging to the trail, I come at last to the crumbling remains of treacherous icy steps, and haul myself to the brow, peering down into the saddle of the hill. Beyond the basin lies a yet more arduous climb to the expansive shattered wall atop the final peak. I expected howling, life-sapping winds, but now, at the most exposed point, the air is deathly still. Though the warmth has drained from the fleeing sun, the sheer stasis of the moment supplies such ambience that neither call nor heat holds meaning. This equilibrium provides a sharp contrast to the cutting pain that accompanies each precious gulp of air. As I battle the demands of giddy peripheral darkness for immediate rest and hydration, I smile grimly, holding close to my chest a trump card: knowledge of the restorative sanctuary below. It would be a mistake to rest at the summit and forsake the gratifying contrast of descent. The trail presents an easy slope down, through broad meadows of sparkling frosted marsh grass and blasted bracken. Everywhere, straggling green life wreck, lames powdery mounds where ants have abandoned nests, mirroring the ruined nests of humanity above. So, fighting to stabilize my breathing, I press reluctant legs to their punishing duty, promising proper respite at the place where I had tearfully accepted Wales as my home. To the right of the path, on the level floor of the saddle, stands a solitary stunted oak, though less than 4 meters tall, his gnarled trunk and mossy branches, still clinging to the last reluctant acorns, stand sentinel at the gate of a people lost to history. Crouching low, he braces a guy, the exposure of his post. Watchful, at the foot of the main fort, he seemingly emerges directly from ancient, lichen-dappled building stones, leaning toward the stricken walls of the Esser fort, arms outstretched. At the base of the tree lie broken, moss-covered slabs offering passable seating, solid and permanent, in defiance of the sapping villainy of burrowing mammals, whose tunnels snake beneath the earth like secret routes to the underworld. It is here that I finally slump, wheezing, lips tingling, fierce drums of torrential blood pounding my ears. Fire tears through every sinew and joint, and the air feels like clay, offering but a sip of oxygen for each rib-cracking gasp. I unscrew the water flask with trembling hands and fill my mouth, swallowing fast tea. Oh, catch the next breath. Through all the pain, the sheer visceral delight of this phase sanctum fills me with satisfaction. Leaning back, the broad branches reach out and over me in a protective embrace. The oak's majesty belies his stature. Split brown acorns nestle cozily in the crunchy mossy grass around my scuffed boots. It occurs to me, out for the first time, that these may be the boots of a dead man. The sun now rests on the hump of the lesser fort, the early valley sunset spreading baby pink wings across the misty horizon. Dusk arrives here long before it reaches the flat lands, starving the hills of what may be a spectacular sunset below. I hope to view it from the final peak, but there is no moving forward until my body consents. Ribbed watercolor clouds go dense in the smooth blue sky even as I watch. Framing the pink haze, night approaches quietly from behind the ledge, a slate-gray stain relentlessly inching forward overhead. Now that my breathing is under control, The stillness is broken only by the quiet whispering of marsh grass or the almost imperceptible tussle of leaves as air gently shifts. No birds in the sky, no sea, gien of burrowers, not even an insect, and no people. There is nothing but the stricken remains of Wygar Fatch, its fractured rocks scattered like a frozen avalanche from the jagged stone teeth at the brow, bearing silent witness to the nameless Neolithic builders who erected high stone walls centuries before the arrival of the Celts. A sun too young to set huddles embraced be, why ruins, casting long golden shadows like fingers toward the summit. I watch for a while as a distant airplane, the last sign of the world below, adds its trail to the clouds and silently follows. He's sun out of view. Those shadows recede. It will not be dark for some time. I take another sip of water, enjoying the limbo of silent stillness, letting it fill me until pain joins the shadows in the slippery realm of memory, leaving me weightless and free. It is in this ghostly twilight that I first see her. She appears unexpectedly from my left, where the hill falls away in what would be an easier ascent. Was there any trail through the undergrowth and rubble? She seems unconcerned with these obstacles, picking her way through waist-high grass as though she knows every rock and pitfall. She's young, not much more than a girl. Despite the cold, she wears a sleeveless patchwork shift, clearly homemade, and a barrage of clashing russet, dark gray, and yellow and burgundy hues. Perhaps she hails from one of the many traveller cabs or communes drawn to the wild west of Wales. At her hip she carries a large woven wicker basket in the shape of a horn. Her hair is long, dark, and wild. Bluish tattoos adorn both arms, and numerous bangles click in time with her step. As she approaches, I see bunches of garlic, mustard, and cleavers fill the basket. She is slim, athletic, and deeply tanned, squatting beneath the tree. Ashamed of my obesity, I wish I were invisible, but she will see me as she passes. Not wishing to startle her, I call out in reassuring sing-song, "Good evening." She looks, sees me, hesitates. She does not reply, feeling silly in the face of her watchful silence. I try again. Nos waith tda. Without a word, she hurries past, her piercing stare never faltering, expertly dodging gorse and mounds. She stares straight through me. I am embarrassed. I avert my eyes, but hers pee in me down. I shift uncomfortably, feeling ungainly and out of place. I am sweating, face burning red. Then she is gone, toward the summit, inexplicably guilty. I want to go home, but my body disagrees. I am unable to stand. The shroud of night has crept forward while my eyes were on the floor. Everything is much darker now. No moon, no stars, no relief as the last of the graying light lingers in the encroaching cloud, leaving me in deep shadow. I try to rise again, but my legs won't cooperate. If I don't move soon, I'll struggle to navigate the icy path, whether onward or back to the car park. My phone has a torch, but little charge. I had planned to make the summit before nightfall, using the last of the power to light my descent. Then I hear them whispering, shifting in the long grass. They can't imagine that I can't hear them. It is a language I don't know. Not Welsh, more lilting. They are all around me. At first I am frightened, then confused. The whispers become murmurs. They are beckoning me, I realize. I understand. Somehow I know the words, like remembering something long forgotten. Come with us, be like us, follow us, I can see them now. Tall, muscular shapes in the shadows, their hair and beards white, shaggy, spiked, dark skin tattooed in spirals, reflecting a gossamer sheen in the dying light. There is no threat. We are sisters and brothers. We turn and walk back to the path. I no longer feel heavy. There is no more pain. As we climb the steep trail, I see the tall walls above, the wide welcoming gates. No fort, but a temple. Snow begins to fall, and spectral waves dusting the path to cover our tracks. I watch, hypnotized, as the hillside comes alive you. Under its crisp blaze, the sacrifice is accepted. The lumpen carcass will lay at the altar for 5 sunsets to feed the eagles, and we shall thrive within the safety of the hills evermore. Story for soul split try as he might, Jackson Harris couldn't rid himself of an overwhelming feeling of guilt. Day after day, night after night, it clawed at his heart like some inner vampire, eager to drink his blood and devour his flesh. His internal pain left external marks. His once-tanned skin grew progressively paler. His slender, but fit body lost enough weight to make his ribs visible. His blue eyes lost their luster, and the skin below them darkened. The worrying lines on his face grew deeper and longer. Why did he feel so guilty? That was the hardest part. He had no idea. He would have understood the cause of his misery if only he could remember it. But nothing in his past would account for such a drastic feeling. The magnitude of his guilt suggested that he had murdered someone in cold blood, stolen someone's life savings, or tortured someone as his guilt tortured him. But he could recall nothing even remotely that drastic. In truth, he was no angel. He didn't go out of his way to help others, but he never went out of his way to harm anyone either. Mostly he took care of himself. But a lot of people thought first of themselves, didn't they? There was a time when he saw someone in distress by the side of the road and didn't pull over. But these days, such a scene could be a trick. Lots of people had been robbed after pulling over to offer help, hadn't they? Later on, he found out that it hadn't been a trick, and that the person whose car had broken down was shortly thereafter hit by another vehicle and killed. But Jackson couldn't predict the future. Now, could he? And if he'd stopped, maybe he would have been killed too. How would that have been any help to anyone? There was also a time when he'd stopped taking a friend's calls because the guy had gotten to be so annoyingly needy. It wasn't Jackson's fault that the guy turned out to be suicidal and killed himself right after his last fail. Ed attempted to reach Jackson. If the guy had made clear what was happening, Jackson would have taken his call. Nobody could expect him to be a mind reader. As Jackson thought about it, his life was full of incidents like that. But none of them were his fault. No, there had to be something else, something so traumatic that he'd suppressed the memory of it. That thought led him to waste many hours with psychiatrists who tried everything from hypnotherapy to transcendental meditation to jolt loose any repressed memories. Nothing surfaced from the murky waters of his subconscious mind. This disappointment led Jackson to start consulting with a remarkably eclectic selection of religious leaders, priests, ministers, and rabbis to start with. They all disappointed him. They wanted repentance from him, but what did he have to atone for? Jackson tried driving in an effort to push his guilt out of his mind by giving it something else to focus on. Driving didn't help him at lines. He still felt haunted by something, though whatever it was remained elusive. Perhaps more would be better. Perhaps farther from home, as if he could somehow run and hide from his past. Drive until his tires had no tread, and he had no idea where he was. One weekend, Jackson got in his car and headed north on US 101. Toward Santa Barbara. He'd intended to do some sightseeing, but his head started pounding as he was passing Summerland. So he took the next off-ramp. His headache subsided before he even had a chance to park, which was odd to say the least. And though his tires still had tread, he realized he wasn't sure exactly where he was. Coast Village, maybe, or Montecito. Not that it mattered much. His guilt still clung to him like the scent of tobacco clung to a heavy smoker. Jackson was definitely in or near Santa Barbara. The distinctive Spanish colonial revival architecture, with its white stucco walls and red tile roofs, was unmistakable. He unmetered street parking, got out of the car, and walked around a little, trying to get his bearings. He had parked in what looked like a downtown area, though it was far too small to be downtown Santa Barbara, and he didn't recognize any of the street names. Each street housed an assortment of nondescript small businesses, none of which interested him. Just beyond the row of businesses on the south edge of downtown, Jackson noticed what looked like a large grove of oak trees. The branches jutted up well above the roof line. Ghost oak trees weren't unusual in this area, but a large stand of old trees seemed out of place in a suburban setting. Drawn by curiosity, Jackson walked in the direction of the oaks. The moment that he passed the last row of businesses, he found himself on a residential street. To his left was a small park, currently empty. To his right stood the coast oaks, partially obscured by a small church that had been -1 in front of them, because there were also oaks on each side. The church seemed at first glance to have grown up in the midst of them rather than being built. That wasn't the only thing that caught Jackson's attention, though the downtown area had been single-mindedly dedicated to Spanish colonial revival architecture, and the houses further down the block from the church followed the same pattern. The church itself looked as if it had come from a rural community in New England. Rather than red roof tiles, the church had gray shingles, and its exterior walls were clapboards painted Hetair rather than smoother surfaces covered by white stucco. There was a steeple, though it wasn't particularly tall. He hadn't even noticed it from downtown, though he should have been able to see it. Off to one side was a simple sign with Church of the Oaks written on it in bold green letters. Jackson found the lack of denominational identification strange. The simplicity of the building and the church's name told him the church wasn't Catholic. If he had to guess, it must be some kind of non-denominational Protestant church. Even though he'd found his earlier attempts to gain comfort from religion unsatisfied, he found himself walking toward the church anyway. Perhaps stumbling upon it like this had been more than just coincidence. Perhaps the solution to his problem lay within. Jackson pulled open the door, which was heavier than it looked, and went inside. The narthex was as plain as the exterior architecture. The sanctuary itself, with its multicolored stained glass windows, would have been a brighter space but for the fact that the oaks effectively blocked out any sunlight that might have filtered in at this time of day, leaving the room depend on artificial lighting the size of the room man. The small number of pews suggested a small congregation. A man Jackson took to be the minister stood near the front, looking expectant, almost as if he had known Jackson was coming, but of course that was impossible. The minister gave him a wave, and Jackson walked down the center aisle toward him. The man wore a plain brown suit with no clerical collar, but Jackson supposed that was common among Protestant ministers outside of church services. The minister was somewhat older than Jackson, a difference indicated by the man's thinning hair, once brown, but now liberally sprinkled with gray, and by his thickening waistline. He greeted Jackson with an unsettling look of concern and motioned for him to take a seat in the front pew. The minister sat down next to him. "I'm Reverend Falco," said the minister, offering a hand. Falco sounded Italian, and therefore probably Catholic to Jackson, but Falco had introduced himself as a minister, somewhat off balance. Jackson took the hand, realizing as he did so that his own was shaking. "Jackson Harris," he mumbled. Falco leaned in as if he had quite heard the name. "What can I do for you?" he asked in a worried tone, faced with telling yet another stranger what his problem was. Jackson hesitated for a moment. "I can refer you to a Substack e-abuse program," began Falco. "I don't need that," snapped Jackson. But a second after, he realized that he probably looked as if he needed one. Nothing made his problem feel even worse than a stranger assuming he was a strung-out junkie. Forcing himself to speak, Jackson stumbled his way through the clearest description of his problem that he could manage. Falco listened patiently until he was done. "The guilt reaction suggests that you really do blame yourself for problems that you say aren't your fault," said Falco. "You can't change the past, boo. You can do better in the future. Put more effort into actually helping others, for example. That could ease your guilt." "But I really haven't done anything wrong," said Jackson. "Isn't there a way to just get rid of the guilt? I mean, like an exorcism or something?" Falco struggled for a moment, as if trying to choke back a laugh. "A guiltercism? I'm afraid there is no such thing, and with good reason. A demon can be exorcised because it isn't really part of you. Your guilt is part of you. It can't be banished except by your own efforts." At first, the conversation had given Jackson a ray of hope, but now it appeared to be boiling down to the same advice he'd heard so often before: do a lot of work to atone for something that wasn't really his fault. Jackson got up, thanked Falco for his time, and came pretty close to running out of the church. Falco took a few steps after him, but must have realized that Jackson wasn't going to come back. "Don't take the easy, Washington. Why out?" Falco yelled after him. Jackson resisted the temptation to turn and look back. He was afraid he would see in Falco's eyes what he'd seen in the eyes of so many others: disappointment. But as Jackson thought about the conversation, he grabbed hold of a couple of things he hadn't noticed initially. First, Falco seemed to treat demons as if they were real rather than just a symbol for temptation or something like that. Second, his parting yell suggested that there might really be an easy way out for Jackson to take. By the time Jackson reached L.A., a plan had already formed in his mind. No, our religious leader was going to help him, that much was clear, but an occultist might. Jackson was no fool. He knew that occultism attracted a lot of crackpots and charlatans. He spent considerable time combing the internet for people who looked as if they might be legitimate. It didn't take him long to recognize red flags, like fortune tellers who included a fine print disclaimer about providing only why entertainment, or supposed magic practitioners who thought that the Necronomicon was a real ancient grimoire, not a fictional creation by H.P. Lovecraft. However, after a while a few promising lads emerged from the mountainous heaps of madness. Jackson followed up each one as meticulously as he could without giving out his credit card number. One by one, they disappointed him just as much as the clergy had, maybe more. At least the religious leaders had been sane and honest, if unhelpful. He was down to his last California lead, a psychic in Madisonville, a small town a little east of Merced, who claimed to be able to heal a soul split into by trauma. That was the opposite of what Jackson was looking for. But if the psychic really knew how to merge two parts of a soul into one, maybe he'd know how to split a soul. That might be grasping at straws, but it was all Jackson had left. The drive to the Merced area was a long one, so he had to wait until the weekend to go. Fortunately, the psychic had weekend hours. Jackson wasn't sure whether that should have been a red flag or not, but at this point, he had little left to lose. Madisonville wasn't much wider than 20 blocks at any point, so it was relatively easy to find the home of Dr. Simon Cyprian, alleged psychic. Based on visits with others, Jackson had expected to see a fairly odd-looking house, but what he found was so conventional that the place even had a white picket fence. The house itself, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath tract house by the look of it, was also painted white. The front lawn was well mowed, and the landscaping well-trim. The doctor himself wasn't what Jackson expected either. He was a clear-eyed, clean-shaven, serious-looking, middle-aged man of about average height and weight, with a mixture of black and gray hair. Rather than dressing to emphasize that he was running a business, he was dressed casually in a James Madison High School T.S. shirt and jeans. "I apologize for my outfit," he said as he shook Jackson's hand. "But this is, after all, casual Saturday." Jackson wasn't sure whether to be impressed or put off by Cyprian's seeming normality. Never having met a real psychic, he had nothing to which he could compare the doctor. "Well, I was expecting a black cloak covered with stars and crescent moons," said Jackson. He had intended that line as a joke, but the quizzical way Cyprian looked at him suggested that the joke had fallen flat. "That kind of look is mostly for sorcerers," replied Cyprian, smiling as he paid the joke back with interest. Jackson let himself relax a little. At least, this experience didn't seem as if it was going to be awkward. Cyprian ushered him into the second bedroom, which the doctor had laid out as a meeting room with one circular table and several chairs. Jackson noticed the absence of a crystal ball on the table, nor was a pentagram etched into the tab. Letop, the ceiling hadn't been painted black and then splattered with silver to represent the astrological signs. There wasn't even a deck of tarot cards in sight. "Sit," said He doctor. "Can I get you anything?" "No," replied Jackson. "Just answers." Cyprian nodded. "Right down to business. That's good." "So what are your questions?" Jackson talked deaf, or quite a while about his pointless guilt and his desire to separate from that part of his soul. "My specialty is healing that very kind of separation," said Cyprian. "It is possible to go the other way, but I wouldn't recommend it." "Why not?" "Well, that kind of separation can only be induced by trauma, and there's no way to peel the guilt out of yourself. What we might be able to do is separate the good from the evil. If the evil part of you is gone, the good part has no reason to feel guilty. Pardon my cynicism, but how much is that process going to cost?" Cyprian smiled. "Lead, nothing up front. You can pay me if you're satisfied." Jackson didn't know how to react. The whole thing sounded too good to be true. But if it was a scam, he didn't see how Cyprian could profit from it. "What do I have to do?" Jackson asked. "Well, trauma is involved. How do you feel about waterboarding?" Cyprian waited for Jackson to gasp, and then smiled. "I was just joking. I have an easier method." Cyprian got up and left the room for a moment, after which he returned with a heavy-looking book. "This is the Book of Cyprian, name after the saint from which my family name came. If you read it from cover to cover, you will attract the attention of a being who can help you." Cyprian dropped the book on the table with a thud. "What kind of being?" asked Jackson. "That's complicated. But is that really important if the being gets the job done?" "I suppose not," said Jackson. After a few more questions, Jackson thanked Cyprian, took his book, and made the long drive home. The book proved to be a huge bore, hundreds of pages of what seemed like a medieval grimoire. It took almost 2 weeks, but Jackson finally finished it as soon as he'd read the last word. He felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you want?" asked a voice that sounded like a hoarse whisper with a weird echo. The chill spread through Jackson's entire body. "I want to separate the evil part of my soul from the good part and remove it." "Done?" Jackson shuddered, but not from the cold. He felt a moment of intense pain followed by relief. For the first time in weeks, the guilt was gone, and he found himself caring about other people. How could he make his neighborhood a better place? A loud knock shook Jackson's front door. He glanced at the clock. The time was just after midnight. Who could be knocking at such an hour? Maybe it was someone who needed help. Without hesitating, the new and improved Jackson hurried to the door and threw it open without even looking. Out the peephole outside stood a man whose identity was unmistakable, even by the dim glow of the porch light. It was Jackson himself, with a mischievous grin on his face and a dark gleam in his eyes. Are you my twin?" Other Jackson smiled more broadly. "Evil twin might be a better description. The part of your soul that you threw away didn't just vanish, you know. It had to go somewhere, so it became me. But you see, there's only room in the world for one of us." Jackson didn't notice the knife until it was already buried in his gut. Story 5 Spilt salt. "I wasn't trying to be an asshole. It's not like I went out of my way to spoil anyone's fun. But I was through celebrating all these damn holidays. Every one of them was just another excuse to sucker a man's wallet. If the bankers and postal carriers weren't taking the day off, then I'd have to endure tacky displays of plastic crap everywhere I looked. And I didn't then want to think about the ass-widening, tooth-rotting piles of garbage the stores pushed on everyone. Besides, the livestock weren't going to give me a day off. They'd want their hay grain, and water morning and night regardless. They were a bit like me. That way they put up with no bullshit. On the plus side, I didn't have to waste time carving pumpkins or stretching fake cobwebs all over the place. There were no inflatable vampires, werewolves, or Frankensteins in our yard, and definitely no plastic skeleton tableau. Marge disagreed. She was into some hippy-dippy shit. Huck always going on about the veil being thinnest and such. I suggested she get busy if she was really worried about thin veils. Make something thicker, I said. For sunset, I swept the porch clean and put the broom away. Marge had spilled salt all over and left the broom sitting in the doorway. Typical. The porch lights were turned off, the door closed and locked, and inside I pulled the curtains shut. The house was dark enough to look deserted or empty, and that was just what I wanted. With the outside locked out, our night proceeded, as it always did. Chores, dinner, and ignoring the tripod. The television. Marge spun on her wheel, while I wrote in my journal with blocky letters straining for legibility. When the clock on the mat clunked and tried to chime 9 times, we brushed our teeth, shucked our duds, and climbed under the covers. Marge listened to some fantasy garbage on Audible, elf and troll smut, or some such. I read digital newspapers on my Kindle. Fucking Amazon had me by the purse strings. But the dry newspaper stories and the quiet, goofy voices of her audiobook always lulled me to sleep quickly before I was out. Marge always rolled over and planted a soft kiss on my lips with a whispered, "I love you." I was pretty sure I responded in kind, but I was also just as sure it came out as a mumble that turned into a snore. Knocking on the door woke me up. No, it woke up Marge, and she woke me up. "Could you, honey? S.H." he mumbled as she nudged me. "Huh? What?" "Sure," I replied, trying to come around. "Someone's at the door." As if on cue, the visitor knocked again. Rap, dash, tap, dash, a dash, tap, dash, tap. Tap, tap. "Gargle fraggin' chirp," I said. "You expecting someone?" "No," Marge answered. "Maybe the police." "For what?" I sneered as I pulled on my breeches. "Maybe something happened near by," I heaved, stuffing my feet into the slippers Marge insisted I wear inside, "and it will still have happened in the morning." "Ain't no need to be rousting folk at midnight," Marge supplied. Looking at the luminous dial of her watch. "Midnight," I agreed. The shirt went on last, buttoned crookedly. Marge rolled over while I cussed the buttons and the dark, and her breathing deepened. I load the doorknob turned as I left to muffle the click. The rapping came again. "I'm coming," I hissed. "Keep it down. Hold your damn horses. The peephole reveal had nothing." Unless just knowing the visitor had hair on the back of their noggin was important, I opened the door a crack. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" I asked. "What do you want?" "Hi, Robert," the visitor said, turning. "How you doing, Carl?" I gaped. "I thought you bought it over in Afghanistan." "Well," he said, his breath was bad, "that last tour was a killer. You going to invite me in, buddy?" "I'll tell you all about it." I said, looking at the threshold. "Marge is asleep." "Well, wake her up," Carl replied, smiling. "It'd be great to catch up with her, too." Carl," I said, "I married Marge after I got out. You re-upped. You've never met Marge, and there ain't no catching up to do. Aw, buddy, you got me all wrong. I want to tell her all the stories of basic training. You remember? We did some awesome shit back then. She's heard enough. I pointed to the faded metal chairs and the porch. We can catch up out here. But I'm cold, Robert. There was a rack behind the front door, and I tossed him my old barn coat. I put on my go-to-town jacket and stepped out. Tell me about that last tour, I said, lowering myself into the chair. It scraped over the concrete. Carl joined me, but his chair didn't scrape. Oh, you know, he waved his hand. Bombs, bullets, and blood. The usual. The news stories said your convoy found an IED. Come on, Robert, he laughed. You don't believe everything you read, do you? Didn't S.C. or Giat Culp warn you about that? Yes, he did, I reply, and I don't. Still doesn't answer my question. Carl, why are you here? Maybe I'm just another warning. I ain't Scrooge, and I don't need any warnings. Oh, Robert, Carl grinned now. He never used to have that many teeth. I don't want you to change. Glad that's settled, I said. I like you just the way you are. Great, Mr. Freaking Rogers with fangs. That's fine. Carl, I said. You come banging on my door at midnight to tell me you like me. Drop me a postcard next time. Now, if you don't mind, I snipped, standing and not really caring if she minded at all. I have to get up early. But Robert, he said, rising, I'm hungry. Pulling a wad of crumpled cash from my pocket, I tossed him a $10 bill. Get a sandwich or something, I said as I opened the door. Bon appetit and bon voyage. Carl, I sniffed a little th. That rotten smell wasn't coming out, and Carl ... Go ahead and keep the coat. Through the peephole, I watched him wait, drool dripping from his teeth. He glared at the door for minutes before tearing his eyes away to look at the crumpled bill at his feet. Finally, he stooped, picked up my offering, and left. Marge, bleary-eyed in robe and slippers, surprised me with a tap on the shoulder. Is everything okay? She asked. You've been gone a while. Yeah, I said, everything's hunky and dory. Oh, good, Marge said through a when. Come on, I put my arm over her shoulders, leading her back to the bedroom. How you coming along with that thicker veil? Story 6. Beneath the silent glacier, the outpost rose from the ice like a cluster of metal bones, half buried in wind. Carved drifts, it sat on the western edge of a nameless Arctic island, a point on the map that might as well not exist. The crew called it Frostbite Station mostly as a bitter joke. Several squat buildings made of corrugated steel bristling with frost-bitten bolts clung to a foundation of ancient blue ice. Every winter storm rattled the walls so violently that the men often wondered if steel could endure the cold at all. The latest storm had passed 2 days earlier, but the freeze it left behind cracked the breath in the air. Larson stood outside the main hut, checking the supports that disappeared into the glacier. Some said he did this to ensure the outpost survived. Others suspected it was to convince himself that something in this frozen wasteland still obeyed the laws of physics. Mara trudged toward him, her hood encrusted with ice. Seismic readings are strange again, she said. Low-frequency rumbling, deeper than anything we ever recorded. Larson didn't look up from the bolts. The company thinks it's the reservoir. They think everything's the reservoir, Mara replied, but tea. She tapped the tablet against her chest. This is different. He finally met her gaze, noticing the spark of curiosity. He knew the same spark that drove her to take month-long shifts here, surrounded by nothing but wind and white. We can look after breakfast, he said. No one drills while half frozen. Behind Mara, Kip staggered out of the barracks, arms folded tightly against the cold. His cheeks were raw from wine burn, and his eyelid stiff with sleep. Is it true? He asked. Another reading? Mara nodded, and deeper. Kip grimaced. Can tea be all? It doesn't move like that. It doesn't move at all, Mara said. It's not a seismic movement, it's resonance. Old Shaw appeared, silent as a shadow. No one knew how many seasons he'd spent here. His beard was as white as the island, his eyes sharp and sunken. He leaned on the railing and said nothing, but Mara felt the weight of his gaze. He always listened, especially when strange things were said. Larson clapped Page's gloves together. Breakfast, he ordered. Then we checked the site. The drilling platform lay half a kilometer from camp, flagged and snapping sharply in the wind. The crew followed on snowshoes, Kip stumbling as the surface cracked. Beneath him, sunlight slanted weakly across the horizon, tainting the world pale. Mara knelt at the base of the rig, brushing frost from tea. He seismograph. Look here, she said, pointing at clusters of deep red peaks. The last wave bounced off something thick and old. How old? Larson asked. Older than the glacier. She hesitated. Maybe older than the island. Shaw exhaled softly, a warning hidden in the sound. They powered up the thermal drills. The initial layers cut easily, packed years, compressed decades, but as the drill hit the deep strata, vibrations shifted. The monitors clicked with sharp metallic echoes. Metal, Kip whispered. Not possible, Resson said. Not at this depth, and yet, Mara said, pointing. It's ringing like something hollow. Ice hissed and steamed under the drills, filling the air with the wet scent of thaw. Centuries. Then the ground shuddered softly, and a muffled crack echoed upward. The drill broke through. A blast of air rose from below, colder than the Arctic itself, alive with intent. Larson swung his lamp down into the black. Nothing, just a cavern so vast that the light never reached the bottom. Lower the harness, Mara said, clipping herself onto the cable. Kip, you go with her, Larson instructed. Kip's face drained of color. He nodded. The descent was slow. Lamp beams scattered across the walls of blue ice older than recorded time. The cavern curved inward, hollow, wet as if something massive had once pressed against it. The air was thick and still. Look, Mara whispered. Half exposed and half fused into the ice wall, a colossal hum. A node hung, limbs impossibly long, a torso massive like a ship hull, pale flesh, perfectly preserved, with ribs splayed outward like timbers. Deep in the ribs, a mineral glowed. Cold light pulsed dim and steady, like a heartbeat too slow for anything living. What is that? Kip whispered. A mineral, Mara said, all threading her voice. I've never seen anything like it. Shaw's voice crackled over the radio. Do not touch it. Larson responded. We're not taking any risks. But corporate orders were clear. Anything valuable must be retrieved. Hours later, after a tense debate, the team began carving through the frozen ribs. Each strike echoed like tapping the hull of a sunken ship. When the mineral finally dislodged, The ice trembled, a low groan rolled through the cavern, deep and impossible. Kip froze. The ice, probably settling. Larson reply. UNCONVINCINGLY ... Mara held the mineral, cold and new. GH to burn, the pulse within throbbed gently. We'll call it the heart, Kip suggested quietly. They hauled it up, sealed it in an insulated crate, and locked it in the equipment shed. Silence hung heavy during dinner. Even Shaw stared at the wall, listening. By nightfall, clouds gathered ominously on the horizon. Metal walls rattled as snow hammered against the siding. Deep within the glacier, a sharp crack rang out, resembling bone under pressure. Mara lay awake, sensing faint but insistent vibrations beneath her. Something else stirred, a rumble from below, far beneath the ice. In an unseen cavern, the giant's ribs shifted. Frost cracked along its chest as its hollow cavity slowly expanded, vapor filling the space between its frozen lungs. It was as if something inside remembered how to breathe. Night engulfed the outpost in a single gust. The storm hit faster than predicted, slamming into Frostbite Station. The walls quivered. By evening, the wind screamed across rooftops, with snow striking the siding like stones. Larson herded everyone into the common hall. No wandering, no one steps outside. Around the propane heater, shadows stretched and shrank, uneasy and alive. Then came unsettling sounds, scraping, with long, uneven drags along the exterior wall. Kip snapped his head up. Wide-eye thumps followed, heavy and muffled, as if something walked against the wind with impossible strength. Hollow breaths whispered between the cycles of the heater. Probably loose siding, Larson said, though his confidence didn't match the whirring in his eyes. No siding weighs that much, Kip muttered. A metallic groan shook the wall, and dust sifted from the ceiling. Mara instinctively clutched the table. That wasn't the wind, she asked. Shaw lifted his head. Still, wine doesn't knock, he murmured. For hours the storm circled them, brushing against the outpost and testing its defenses. Shadows flickered across narrow slit windows. Kip swore he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, and too far apart for a man. They slept in shifts, barely managing to doze at dawn, and the storm faded into a distant growl outside. The air was shockingly still, with pale, bruised light spilling over the snowdrift, smooth except for a deep scar leading to the equipment shed. The doors open, Mara said, her voice thin. The metal door hung crookedly with no signs of forced entry. The latch was unfastened. Inside, the heart's crate sat empty, insulation cracked and brittle. It's gone, Kip whispered. It took it. We don't know what it is, Larson admitted. Mara noticed faint indentations in the snow. Brushing aside the powder, she froze. A footprint, 3 thick, hooked toes nearly reached her knee, much larger than her own foot. More prints wound around the outpost. The edges of the tracks steamed faintly, as if heat had been sucked from the snow. It doesn't produce warmth, Mara said softly. It takes it. Shaw crouched, his expression unreadable. Ice remembers old things, sometimes too well. Larson exhaled. Save the stories for later. Start searching. They combed the perimeter in widening circles. The prints circled the buildings, paused near windows, and studied the camp. Mara noted subtle trenches and deep ruts, as if something colossal had dragged itself before finally standing. The trail led to jagged pressure ridges. A slope revealed a long rut in the snow. A gust lifted the fog, revealing motion. A towering silhouette limped across the ice, distorted, elongated, and hollow. Ribs jutted from its torso like a wrecked vessel, and one armed doctor agged behind it. Kip stumbled back. "It's moving on its own." "It's not," Shaw said. "Not with that body. Something inside it doesn't breathe anymore." Mara felt her throat tighten. "It's using the giant's body, wearing it like a shell." The figure paused, then lurched through icy spires toward the frozen strait. "If it reaches the mainland," and Larson said, "there's no predicting what will happen next." "What do we do?" Mara asked. "Stop it, harpoons, polar bear guns," Larson replied. Mara nodded. "If the hear T controls it, destroying or returning it may be the only way." Kip swallowed hard. "You have to get close." "Close enough," Larson affirmed. Shaw tightened his coat. "You will. Ain't fighting the giant, you'll be fighting whatever has awakened inside it." No one argued. The tracks stretched ahead, massive and steaming, leading into the fog and toward the horizon. Snowmobile. Les roared, swallowed by the glacier expanse as the sun hung low, tail fighting the fog to illuminate jagged crevasses. The temperature dropped sharply, and their lungs burned. Kip's hands trembled. Then Larson's calm demeanor frayed. Mara tracked the shadow from the day before, kneeling beside a fissure, one arm probing deep into the ice. "Stop here," Larson ordered. "Don't get closer yet." Mara leaned forward. "It's looking for the heart. Whatever controls it is inside." Kip's voice trembled. "We can't shoot it. Look at its size." Larson dismounted, a harpoon slung over his shoulder, followed by the others. Tension coiled in every step. Mara pointed. The giant's head jerked stiff and unnatural. Its mouth gaped open, exhaling frozen vapor. Inside its hollow chest, something small and many-limbed clung to the ribs, tugging on frozen tendons like strings, steering the giant's body. Kip stumbled back. "It's inside it." Larson fired. The harpoon slammed into the giant's shoulder. No blood issued forth, only frost that cracked like spider webs. The giant lurched and balanced. Snowmobiles wobbled. One flipped, tossing a miner to the ground. Mara caught a glimpse of the heart embedded in the parasite, pulsing rapidly. "Steady," Larson shouted. "Take the shot when it opens." The giant swung its bulk, its jerky steps leaving deep, steaming grooves in the snow. The parasite inside pulled the limbs like a puppeteer. Mara realized that if they didn't act fast, the giant could reach the mainland by nightfall. Larson crouched and fired the final harpoon into its spine. The giant shuddered, groaning like cracking ice before it toppled, its ribs grinding against each other. The parasite slipped free, dragging the glowing heart with it. Its limbs scuttled over the frost and rock, claws sparking against the ice. Mara approached cautiously. Tiny skeletal arms had fused into the crystal. They weren't merely hull. Dang it, they were part of it. The parasite had grown from the heart. The giant was merely a shell. It's born from it. Mara whispered. Larson nodded. "Then it ends here." They struck the heart with harpoons, chisels, and anything metal they could find. It shattered with a crystalline scream. A wave of cold erupted, searing the air and freezing the ground. The parasite froze mid-motio, and as the giant collapsed inward, they took a breath. Silence hung heavy in the air. Relief was short-lived. Beneath the glacier, the snow shivered. Seismic alarms wailed at the outpost. Deep forms stirred in untouched hollows. Mara swallowed hard. This isn't over. Larson tightened his gloves and scanned the horizon. No, it's just beginning. The glaciers stretched endlessly before them. Shapes waited beneath the surface, and the miners, aware of what they'd awakened, felt the fragile weight of survival. Shadows lengthened as the sun dipped. Low, the wind whispered warnings, carrying the faint echo of colossal forms stirring below. Story 7. The color of snow. Ask me what the color of snow is. I'll tell you it's blood red. Always has been. I'm only 14. That shouldn't be my answer. The ground beneath my bare feet burns from ice. The white horizon stretches in every direction, hypnotic, like the lies we've been fed. Father, my voice is soft, innocent. The violence is still dormant. Why do you want me to be a killer? The man behind the white veil is level with my gaze, though I see no eyes. Silk cascades over his face. It spills from the wide-brimmed sun hat, a curtain that surrounds his head with honor. He wears the color of surrender, his suit, crisp purity. No fire burns beneath the clean shade. Greed and destruction are his fuel. He's trying to make me see, trying to mold me to his image. My fists are tight, a frozen rebellion, and resisting his flame, we're called by our weaknesses, mine, spotted skin spots, to belittle me further. Spots, he lolls, the silk over his lips ripples softly. Our lineage is elite, blood and breath, worship and power. Our name stays eternal. He says it like God blessed us. Holy malice. Taking my hands, he holds them meaningfully. His skin is pale perfection. The underside of his hands, slick obsidian, though they move like soft leather. They're hot. Mine are cold, but the warmth doesn't reach me. Only pressure from his grip speaks. You were born with a gift. Something divine lives inside of you. Something only a veil strider can carry. One you'll soon become. That predatory calm watches me. I don't need to see at his stare is unblinking. I can feel it. He hunts my eyes for the switch to make me submit. I stare back. Defective. He's disappointed. I understand. My mind is empty. Nothing remains for him to take. I threw everything away the day my brother died. Mother, a half veil, had kept the lights on in my mind, only a flicker, but a soft amber that kept breath in my lungs. But when she was executed, a void as barren as my heart. When father replaced stutter with black hair, one child for another, I sealed the iron rot that is my heart with a lock, and if he'd ere to unlock it, he'd see his demise. But I don't want it unlocked. I don't want to be like him, like all the veil striders. Spots, he says, reaching for me, tell me you understand what you must do. Something beyond the skeletal trees breaks through the snow's glittering crust. The crisp sound spikes my pulse along with his words. His thin hand slips under his vest and age. He replaces the heat in my hands with cold metal. It bites into my palms like dry ice searing, my nerves dying beneath it. Seamless chrome glints at every angle. The dagger's edge is surgical. It shines without flaw or purpose, but it's nothing but flaw. It's the very thing that'll rob me of everything. An endless life of mistakes and pain. I want to weight out of my hands, but a train, thank you, nearly crosses my lips. I swallow it. I can smell the heat rise off of him, a whisper of ammonia and burnt flesh. I quietly exhale it from my lungs. I glance at his absent face. His presence is almost camouflaged in the soon-to-be whiteout. There are other veiled striders, here to unseen, but watching. The air is starved of breath, you see, and here the snowflakes fall to their death. I envy them. Father looks immaculate. I don't. I wear rags of the slain fabric that was stiff this morning. Now its rust stains absorb the moisture, and bleed for a second time across my skin. He waits for my answer. Patience is a virtue of theirs even when faced with endless screaming and sobs. For mercy, my eye catches a fat snowflake. It would have caught on his shoulder if it could have, but it evaporates the instant it tries to touch him. They are untouchable not by nature or by enemy, not even go. The flakes clump to me instead, slowly consuming my existence. My shivering is meaningless. I want to go back inside. But there isn't one not until I've accepted. Refusal feeds the whiteout. I want to refuse. But one thing threatens my resistance. The blade catches my dead stare. Rhyme has begun creeping around the handle. With each blink, spider cracks weaken my morals. My eyes lick to his. I feel the shift, see the grin spread. Underneath the veil, can I choose anybody? My words are too dark. Like someone else spoke them, they were everything. Mother taught me not to be. But what blooms beneath my skin? Electricity sparks my heart. I am ready to become like him. He places his palm on my shoulder, practiced warmth. Then it happens, his veil begins to lift, just a touch, enough to reveal a grin made of parchment and bone. It peels back my nerves. I've never seen the face of a veil strider. His jaw is sick, and his smile as trustworthy as thin ice. Yes, you may choose anyone. Approval makes the foreign object in my hands feel safe. I straighten, locking in my decision. The corner of his mouth curls, eager to swallow my words. I want black hair. My voice is solid, certain. His smile retracts. No, he killed stutter. He exhales through a new smile. It should heat the air, it doesn't. Spots. He says the name of his favorite daughter slowly. He made a mistake. Black hair has proven himself as worthy as an asset. I challenge the demon before me. It was no mistake, I whisper. The veil rises further. The shake in my limbs isn't from the snow. We never see their eyes, never. Time fractures. He reveal is complete. Facial features as hard as marble, and his eyes, the shape is there, but the socket is backed with rows of blue-gray lashed feathery bristles. When he blinks, it's soft, you can almost hear it brush. Our gaze holds, his smile is artificial, it was. He stays, he says, even and insistent, protecting his favorite son. I look at the dag. This time with anger, my blonde hair crawls over its reflective surface. My blue eyes warp. My finger trails the edge of the blade. It effortlessly cuts. I feel nothing. I swallow and choose another victim. Him, he is no longer my father, but I know he is off limits. For now, my cyclops. I hand back the weapon to choose for me. His smile twitches, then it spreads. His teeth are human to human, skewed perfection. I admire your bravery. His tone is an anesthetic. It tries to numb me. I don't allow it. You will do well, I'm certain. I force a smile, despite my chattering teeth. Thank you, Corvath. The disrespect smudges his polished dot. He corrects me gently. It's faith. Always I nod like a proper daughter. Lie like one, too. He doesn't see the truth not yet. Father is a title I'll bury with stutter. I silently apologize to Mother. I am not proud of this. Their cult is built on blood and ruin. But ruin is a language I speak fluently now. Let him choose my first kill. Let him think I belong to him. I will learn our rituals, master their blades, wear their veils, walk in perfect skin. They kill everything that crosses their path. But so will I. His veil restores itself, and he turns see. LK dancing with the wind, I force my dead limbs to follow. Winter stole my warmth. He claimed my innocence. But I keep my truth and hold my secret. The snow will hold the blood of many, but one day it will learn his blood too.